Hi, so why the heck am I crazy enough to be digging into this? Let me go through with you how truly nuts I must be. Oregon marijuana prices hit record lows, market at weakest economic position. This is published just in March 12th, 2023, by the way. Oregon marijuana prices are at an all-time low. Median retail prices fell to $4 a gram at the start of 2023, according to the state regulators, off 16% from the year earlier. Last year's decline continues a long downward trajectory that has reduced prices by more than half in the 7 years since recreational marijuana became legal in Oregon. The Oregon recreational marijuana market is in arguably the weakest economic position it has been in since the inception of the program in 2016, said the Oregon Liquor and Cannabis Commission. Falling prices are great for consumers who, wary of inflation's effect on most other products, but abysmal for Oregon retailers and growers. State economists warned that last month that tax collections are below forecasts. That's not just because falling prices have reduced the state's cut. Amid the steep decline, struggling cannabis businesses are unable to pay all their bills. Oregon collects a little more than $150 million in marijuana tax revenue annually. The industry's deepening troubles are a notable development, given that Oregon's cannabis market has grown into a billion-dollar market. We have a record amount of overdue accounts receivable, retailers that owe us money, said Mason Walker, CEO of East Fork Cultivators, which farm cannabis in Josephine County. That's happening across the market. It's causing pain up and down the supply chain. The reason prices keep falling is economics 101. Supply is just much higher than demand. Marijuana grows abundantly in Oregon, but cannabis remains prohibited under federal law and can't be sold legally across state lines. And while cannabis has proven increasingly popular, the state's 4.2 million residents consume only a fraction of the marijuana that the state's farmers grow. The OLCC estimates Oregon cannabis demand was just 63% of the supply last year, and sales in 2022 fell by more than 17% to $994 million, the Oregon's industry's first ever annual decline. Production is dropping too, as farmers respond to falling prices, but supply and demand are far from balanced. Farmers produced less cannabis last year as it became clear the surge in demand that accompanied the pandemic wouldn't continue. But state regulators say there's another problem for retailers and growers. Large stocks of inventory left over from prior years. That could hold prices down indefinitely. These low consumer prices force businesses to operate under low margins and extreme pressure, the OLCC wrote in last month's report. Some major cannabis companies have left Oregon altogether. Among them, Curaleaf, one of the nation's largest marijuana businesses. Those exits are very notable, and they leave a vacuum for the survivors to fill. Walker said he doesn't see any quick fix for the industry. Oregon stopped issuing new cannabis licenses last year in reaction to the supply issues, but Walker said that there has been very little effect because so many licenses had been issued already. And while marijuana remains illegal at the federal level, more individual states have legalized it. Walker said that reduces spending by people who travel to Oregon to buy cannabis, some of whom used to buy enough to quietly take home when they left. Oregon's cannabis businesses have weathered hard times before, Walker said, most notably during a sharp decline in prices at the start of 2018. But he said the industry is coping with fatigue from the prolonged downturn, with a growing number of businesses giving up and selling their licenses for a fraction of what they had hoped. It's not a completely screwed up market, Walker said, but it's challenging. Okay, I don't know whether that's called foreshadowing, but I'm going to now pitch you an Oregon-based producer. Now, I found this company on the Small Cap Discoveries YouTube channel, which led me to Aaron Idlehart's work, who I was familiar with from Nelnet and HireQuest. So it was kind of cool that I circled back to Aaron. We must think in somewhat of a similar way, therefore some serious confirmation bias is going to be happening here, but that's for you to be smart enough to realize and think for yourself. So Grown Rogue is a craft producer of cannabis based in Oregon, of course, and also Michigan. These markets are ultra competitive places, so any solid performance here is, I think, quite impressive. In 2022, the results were they were free cash flow positive, $3.2 million in cash flow and $0.9 million in free cash flow. $1.1 million was spent on CapEx, which wouldn't all be maintenance CapEx. So my guess is the number of free cash flow was actually probably closer to 1.5 million for the year. And I think this is the only company that was free cash flow positive in the industry. This is countrywide. I couldn't find a single other company. And now for a more recent update in Q1, the numbers were, well, they were free cash flow positive 0.8 million for the quarter. That's 3.2 million annualized. I think it's going to be closer to 4 million. Now that number I probably shouldn't annualize because that could vary a lot based on prices, but we are looking at reasonably depressed revenues right now. As the article suggested, this is as low as it's been, but the company still were cash flow positive last year and in Q1 in this terrible industry, low prices. Average prices for indoor cannabis were like $700, I think $800 per pound. Outdoor was like $300 per pound. Almost every player can't produce flower at break even at these prices, but Grown Rogue can. Now, the difference with Grown Rogue compared to pretty much everybody else is that they've optimized operations and just dominated Oregon. They got the cost to produce indoor flowers down to about the $500 range, which is the lowest I've found in the industry for indoor. And this meant that they were able to withstand the dramatic crash in price last year and were still cash flow positive. Imagine what happens to margins when things normalize and the supply equilibrium comes back. Well, how long will that take, you might ask? Well, the market obviously fluctuates a lot, and it's all about supply as demand is quite consistent. But like that article suggested, there's inefficient producers out there that were unable to weather the storms in 2022. The strongest have survived, and they're going to thrive, I think, in the next 2023-2024 period. See, supply has come back a lot since these producers just couldn't viably produce at that price. So not as many producers are going to be in business, therefore not as much supply, and prices are actually starting to come back up again. To clarify that things I think are turning around, this little comment here in the Cannabis Benchmarks website says, Oregon wholesale spot price jumped $35 this week and has added $200 per wholesale pound on a nearly straight run up over the past 3 weeks. And Grown Rogue stands out for their relentless focus on cost and efficiency. The company has a low employee count per grow facility and a very lean management structure with a no-frills approach. Aaron Idlehart actually has a great write-up on this one at Mindset Capital. You just go to their website, I think, for more information there. Now, as you know from the previous videos I've made here in cannabis, I really like low-cost producers. I think they have an inherent and competitive advantage by being able to understand how to make quality product at the lowest prices. And I really want to dig further into management on this one. I think that's probably the most impressive part of this company. I really like Grown Rogue. I'm very interested to dive into this one in detail in the next episode. Stay tuned for that. I hope you're enjoying. I'll see you then.